years ago, last weekend, whatever the, hold on, what's
That's
going
okay.
on?
I'm
Okay.
I'm recording your portion of this.
All right, cool. All righty. So 5 years ago, last weekend, whenever the conference was just recently, the Lord set me free from a lifetime of drugs. And this is something I had I'd tried to do, and I couldn't do it. And the Lord set me free. So I got on fire. I mean, I grew up a Christian, but I never really saw any miracles. I didn't really know that God was really real. I knew somebody we talked about, and but I didn't have a relationship with him, I guess you say. So anyway, the Lord set me free from a lifetime of drugs, and I got on fire. I wanted to know everything there was, because I found out there's a God in heaven who really does miracles and still does them today, because he set me free. So I got my Bible out. I blew about an inch of dust off of it. I opened it up to the beginning, and I was going to start in Genesis, and I go all the way to Revelations, and I was going to try to know every word that God put in that Bible, so I would know his word and know my Savior. And so I started out with zeal. I started in Genesis. I started reading, and I didn't get very far when I came to the story of the Israelites when they were being held captive in Egypt. And I'm reading these stories with a new light. I'd heard these stories growing up in Sunday school and whatnot, but now I was like on the edge of my seat, because I knew I had just seen a miracle in my own life. So I was reading these stories as if I were walking through the Red Sea on the dry ground with the Israelites, and just on the edge of my seat. I couldn't get enough of the Bible. But then I got to these people that God did all these miracles for. They walked through the sea, the Red Sea on dry ground. They don't much get further than the other side. They start moaning and murmuring and complaining, and some of them even wanted to go back to Egypt. And I didn't understand it. This is like a paragraph or two later, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And I was asking God, I was like, God, what is going on with these people? I mean, these are life miracles that you would remember for a lifetime. Yet a paragraph or two later, they're right back to their pagan worship. And I said, they're supposed to be your chosen people. Did you just choose a bunch of idiots or what? And it was just like God flipped a switch on him in my mind. And I just went, whoa. And I sat back in my chair, and God allowed me to look back over my entire life and reminded me from an early age until the present day, things that he had done for me, Red Sea parting type miracles in my life. And I walked through on dry ground, and I tell God, thank you, for a week or two or a month. But then it wasn't long, and I was right back to my pagan worship, which was sex, drugs, and rock and roll in my case. So this is the testimony that God gave me that morning when I was asking him about his chosen people, and he gave me this testimony. I had it. I just forgot it all. So it starts out when I'm 11 years old. I did my first line of cocaine when I was 11 years old. Ooh, Holy Spirit's hitting hard. I'm already getting emotional. I did my first line of cocaine when I was 11 years old. My brother was a drug dealer, and he would drive. He was 14 years older than me. He was kind of like a dad figure to me. I idolized my brother, and he'd go down to Florida and get kilos of cocaine and bring them back to Oklahoma, and then cut them up and sell them. And so we were going bird hunting one morning at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I walk in on him and my brother-in-law and another friend doing lines of cocaine, and he looked over at me. He said, "You want one of these? Come here." It didn't matter what my brother said. I was going to do it. I'd jump off a bridge. I'd do it. And so I didn't even really know what I was doing, but I did the coke, and I realized I liked it. And so I started doing drugs at 11 years old. I wasn't a drug addict at 11 years old, but I sure liked them. And so that led from cocaine to drinking alcohol and smoking pot, and eventually meth and heroin and mushrooms and acid, LSD, you name it. If it's a drug out there, I probably tried it, and more than likely I abused it. But I took care of my stuff. In other words, I came from a very disciplined family. I mean, we worked, we cleaned all day Saturday. When there's no more cleaning to do, we went out and picked up rocks. I mean, we were just a disciplined family. So even in my drug usage, I would take care of myself. I graduated high school. Like, people in high school used to say, "Dave, how do you party harder than anyone in school, but you make better grades than most of us?" And to me, it was easy, man. I just didn't go to school high. I got high after school. So I graduated high school. I went to college at Oklahoma State University. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics. I actually studied in London, England at London School of Economics. I have an international minor in international economics. Princess Diana used to run through our rose garden when I when I went to college there. Anyway, I graduate college. I'm drugging the whole time through college. I just I partied. I wasn't an addict. I just was a social user. But drugs were always part of my life from the age of 11 on. So then I graduated high school or college, and I moved to Tulsa, and I become a mortgage maker. And I'm kicking butt and taking names, working Monday through Friday, and Friday through Sunday, I'm partying, super stretch limos, bags of cocaine and meth, and, limos full of women, and just living life. And, I was what you'd call a functioning addict then, because nobody knew I was knew I was a drug user. I used to go in the bathroom, take my suit jacket off, and get my syringe out and shoot up, and then go back to the bank where I worked at. I'd carry a 45 under my suit jacket, but I still stayed in control until something came along called crystal meth, and crystal meth. It got me right from the very first time. I'll never forget it. I shot up at like 1 o'clock on a Friday, and Monday morning when I had to go back to work, I was still awake from that crystal I had done on Friday. And so, being a very goal-oriented, productive type person, and very high ranked in my company, I had to maintain my workability. So I felt like I had no choice except to get more meth. And just one thing led to another, and soon after that, I became an all-day, everyday addict. Just I couldn't get out of bed with it. I used it every day. All day, and that was just I couldn't kick it. This went on for probably a year or two until it started affecting my job, and I ended up losing my corporate job, and so I get fired from my company because I'm a meth addict. So what do? I can't go get another job somewhere else. They're just going to find out the same thing. So I just opened my own mortgage company. And I was doing good, I was kicking butt and taking names. When I opened my own mortgage company, I was kicking butt, taking names. I was making a name for myself. I was recognized by the mayor of Tulsa for promoting home ownership in Tulsa. I have a picture and a plaque with her signature and certificate of excellence award. People called me Banker Dave and Mr. Mortgage. I mean, I was well known. I was very good at what I did. God's always blessed me in my work. And but what people, I had 2 houses. I had one on both sides of town in Tulsa just because I could. I had a sports car and a Harley. And so from the outside looking in, it appeared that I was very successful. Most of my friends were very envious of me. But what they didn't know, most people didn't know, is I had a problem, and I was a meth addict, and I was an all day, every day user. And I can remember praying even back then, asking God to please deliver me from this meth addiction, because I couldn't do it. I'd make it a week or two. I'd make it, a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then, something always happens. Somebody you haven't seen in 3 years that owed you a bunch of money would show up with a free bag of dope. I mean, things that didn't happen ordinarily would happen whenever you're trying to quit. But I never could make it past that week and a half or 2 week mark. I was praying to God, asking him. And then I guess he heard my prayer, because on January 18th of 2001, I came home from work, was in my suit and tie, sat in my bedroom, got my meth pipe out, was smoking meth, and ding dong, went and opened the door, and it was a lady police officer. And I said, "Can I help you?" And I opened the door about that far, and people just like SWAT team started coming down from out of the trees, coming in all entrances of my house, raided my house. I mean, I didn't know what was going on. They took me to jail for manufacturing, distribution, possession. I was all over the news. I made the international news. They had me as the largest manufacturer and distributor of GHB in the entire state. So I was the first person to ever get caught manufacturing this drug. And so they were going to make an example out of me. This is the first time that I've ever been in trouble. And they tried to give me life in prison. I'm a banker. I wear a suit and tie. I'm not going to prison for life. I mean, it just wasn't reality to me. So I lawyered up, and I fought this for 2.5 years. I went through like 4 lawyers and like 40 grand. And I ended up plea bargaining, and I plea bargained for a 15-year sentence. I mean, my first offense, and I'm going to prison for 15 years. And so I can remember like one day, literally one day, I'm sitting at my desk in a suit and tie, and the next day I'm shackles and chain, baby, on the bus on the way to prison. And that it was just surreal. One of the scariest days of my life was stepping off that prison bus. I got to the prison yard, was like me and 6 other guys, and we step off the bus, and there's like 2,000 inmates out on the yard. And I don't know what they were doing, but we just happened to get there where everybody was out on the yard. And we step off the bus, and it went silent. Every eye on that yard was on us, and you could hear a pin drop. And then I figured out, oh, they're checking out the fresh meat, and me and these other boys were the fresh meat. So, yeah, I still get goosebumps thinking about that. It was a horrible feeling, but what do? I'm in prison. I can't get out. So you just get into life and start figuring it out. And I remember one day I was walking on the way to laundry, and I was holding my prison graze, and I was looking up at the razor wire, and I just said, God, I said, God, when I was asking you to deliver me from meth, I was thinking more along the line of a 12-step program. And he just laughed and said, yeah, I know what you were thinking, David. That wouldn't have worked for you. But I'm reminded of Joseph in the Bible. See, Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery and then into prison. But the Bible says that Joseph was blessed while he was in prison. Let me tell you, I was blessed in prison. God opened doors for me. And the first one, I mean, he did things for me. I didn't recognize it going through it, but looking back now, I have an amazing testimony. The first door he opened for me in prison was getting me a job in laundry. And where I went to prison, it was a drug offenders work camp. They put us in like a military boot camp for the first 3 months, except no guns. Other than that, it's the same as the military. Then they put us on a regular prison yard. And then while you're waiting for a job, you have to get a job on the regular yard. And that might take 3-4 months. So while you wait to get a job, you have to clean all day, and it's just busy work. It's 8-9 hours of just walking around doing the same thing, because they won't, you get 2 15-minute breaks a day. The other than that, you have to be moving. So you might mop that floor, 50 times during that 8 hours. You might dust your bunk bed, who knows how many times, but it was horrible. The time just ticked by. I was in solitary confinement for 30 days, where I was locked in a cell by myself for 23 and a half hours a day. They let me out for 30 minutes to eat and to shower and make a phone call. And to me, that was easier time than doing this cleaning. I hated this cleaning. I dreaded every day. The days took like a day seemed like it took a week. And so one day I'm mopping or cleaning my rack or something, and this guy walks around and he says, hey, man, do you know how to sew? And normally I would have just said no. But today, for some reason, I said, why? He said, well, the sewing machine operator just got to go home and we have an empty position. I said, oh, yeah, I know how to sew. I know how to sew, baby. I didn't know how to sew. I never sewed in my life. Now, I had seen my dad and my brother. My dad was a shoe cobbler. My brother owned an upholstery company. So I had seen people sew my entire life, but I'd never actually sat in a sewing machine and sewed. So he said, come on, let's go get your interview. And so I go over to the laundry, and the guard takes me around, or the inmate, and there's I'm sitting there staring at 2 sewing machines. One on the right has a guy sewing. The one on the left is the empty sewing machine. He said, have a seat right there at the empty one, and the guard will be around in a minute to give you an interview. I said, all right, cool. So I sat down and I looked at the guy at the other sewing machine. And I said, hey, man, I'm Scarberry. Nice to meet you. He said, I'm Mortensen. Nice to meet you. And I said, so what I got to do to get this job? He's like, piece of cake, man. Just show him you know how to sew and you're good. I was like, all right, cool. I was like, hey, brother, it's been a while. Can you tell me how to turn this machine on? And literally there's a light switch, like a light switch looking thing, says on off at the front of the machine. And he just reaches over, he turns it on. I was like, whoo, thanks. Appreciate it, man. And I was like, you know what, man? I don't think I've ever sewed on this particular make and model of machine. Can you show me a stitch? And so he reaches over and he puts the fabric under the foot. And so there's a foot pedal. You push down on it and it sews forward. Right. And then it has a little lever you push over here, you push the foot pedal, and it sews backwards. So he shows me sew forward, sew backward, and the guard comes around and said, all right, Scarberry, let's see what you have. So I looked at him and I grabbed the fabric and I pushed the pedal, I sewed forward, I pushed the lever and pushed the pedal and sewed backwards. He said, you got the job. So I was like, hallelujah, man. I bluffed my way into this job so I didn't have to clean anymore. So then I had to learn to sew. I mean, I had no idea how to sew, but the guy sitting next to me taught me how to sew over the next weeks and months. So fast forward, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months, something like that. And the guard over laundry comes in and he's asking about fabric color because he's going to buy new workout equipment and new mattresses and new pillows for the prison yard. And I don't know where my voice came. I don't know where it came from, but I said, hey, why don't we just reupholster them? I didn't know how to reupholster. But he said, "Good job, Scarberry. Good idea, Scarberry. I'm putting you in charge." So me and another guy, we ended up recovering 2,000 mattresses, 2,000 pillows, or 2,500 pillows, and all the workout equipment on the yard. And this, they bring a local newspaper in and lands my picture on the front page of the city newspaper, not the prison newspaper, but the city newspaper, of me setting up my sewing machine, looking over my shoulder, grinning, and the caption says, "Inmate saves Department of Correction $3,800." I mean, what? I didn't even know how to sew 4 months earlier. So in prison, everything you do, it gets written up and filed in your permanent jacket or in your permanent file. So this got written up and put in my jacket. Another thing, I was the only guy in college that had only guy in prison that had a college degree. So I started using that to my advantage. I started tutoring guys, helping them learn to read and write, and helping them get their GED. This got written up and put it in my permanent file. I was teaching Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous classes. So this got written up and put in my file. Me and another guy, we started a prayer circle. It wasn't much of a circle, it was just he and I. So it wasn't much of a circle to start with, but we'd go out and pray every night. And then we'd go back into our barracks and we'd tell other guys, invite other guys, "Hey man, you should join us for prayer tomorrow night." By the time I had left that prison yard, the last count I had was 48 hardened criminals standing in a circle every night before we went to bed, thanking Jesus for who he is and what he's done for us. Another thing is another door God opened. I was, I don't know, working one day or something, and the guards were going through mug shots, and they were like, "Scarberry, get over here." And they were giving me a hard time because I was the only inmate who their mugshot had a suit and tie on because I wore a suit and tie every day to work. And when I went to court to be sentenced, I wore a suit and tie. So they took me to prison in a suit and tie. And so they were harassing me, giving me a hard time. Like, "What are you doing wearing a suit and tie?" I'm like, "Well, I own a mortgage company." Long story short, I start running mortgage loans from the inside of prison for the prison guards and for my counselor. So I don't know if that one got written up and put in my permanent jacket, because I don't know if that was exactly legal or not. But the point is, God opened doors for me and just blessed me and blessed me. And I was just thinking, I'm like doing my time. Like, I don't want to sit around and do nothing. I want to keep busy. And so I started doing all this stuff. Well, let's fast forward. I'm serving my 15-year prison sentence, and I make it just under a year, I think 10 or 11 months. And one morning at 4:30 in the morning, the guards wake me up. They say, "Scarberry, pack up, we're going." I said, "What's going on?" They said, "We're taking you back to court. You've been called back to court." So I got called back. Anytime you go to court, you have to pack up all your belongings, because you don't know if you'll get transferred to another yard or if you get sent somewhere else. So you have to pack up. So I pack up and I go back to Tulsa, and I found out that I was called back on what they call a judicial review. And so I went before the judge, and I'll never forget the words she said to me. She said, "Mr. Scarberry, in all my years as a judge, never have I seen anyone who's accomplished more than you have in such a short amount of time. And because of that, I'm going to suspend the remainder of your sentence. But if you get caught so much as jaywalking, you're coming back to prison from day one for the full 15 years. So with a 15-year prison sentence, I fought life to get it plea bargained down to 15. After just 10 months, I got to go home. You can't tell me God didn't have his hand in that. And so I was grateful. I said, "Thank you, God. I love you, Jesus." And then to show him how grateful I was, I went out and got high and got laid. That was the first thing I did. I'm reminded of the Israelites just running back to Egypt. Same with me, man. Thanks, God, for getting me out of prison. Let's go do some dope. Within 2 years of getting released from prison, I gained sole full custody of my 3-year-old son. Now I'm a felon. I'm still doing prison time. I'm still on 14 years suspended sentence, which means I can go back at any time. And I'm in Oklahoma, a state that they don't normally give custody to the men. They give it to the women. And somehow I got not joint custody. I got sole full custody of my 3-year-old son. I sent out a bunch of resumes all over the 4 states, and I landed a job in Dallas, Texas. And it was what am I trying to say? I can't remember the title, doesn't matter. President of a mortgage company. And so I thought, man, killer job in Dallas. Nobody knows my name in Dallas. Everybody knows me in Oklahoma because I was all over the news. I'm going to make a new fresh start. So I headed to Dallas with my son. My sister lived down here, so I moved in with her, and I started doing this job. And I was kicking butt and taking names. I've always been blessed. Anything I put my hands to, work-wise, God's always blessed me, and He did the same here. When I started the job, there was a thermometer that they draw on the wall, and they keep track of how of your goals. And I remember my boss said, "Hey, that's President's Club. You need to hit that." So I did. It took me 2 years, but I hit it. And then they made a big deal about it. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you hit President's Club. You're only the third person in company history to ever do it." So I was really doing good at this job. And then I got that itch. So I don't know if there's any former drug addicts on the call, but when I say I got that itch, that means I wanted to get high. I wanted to do some dope. I was craving that old life for some reason. I don't know why. Things were going so good, and I don't know why. We self-sabotage ourselves. But I didn't go back out to the streets. I didn't just run back out to a meth dealer. I was smarter than this now, you see. So I went to a doctor, and I got legal meth. I got Adderall. That's the same thing. It's not quite as strong maybe, but it's, just pure meth. And then I found out pain pills gave me a lot of energy too. So I got on pain pills, and then I got on muscle relaxers. And then the next thing you know, this month's worth of supply of pills I'm going through in a couple of weeks. So, hey, I just got another doctor. So then I was just seeing 2 doctors. And then 2 doctors turned to 3, and 3 and 4. It became almost a full-time job doing these doctors and rotating pharmacies. I'd go to CVS one day, I'd go to Walgreens the next day, I'd go to Brookshire's grocery store the next day, and I had it all set up. And I remember one day I went to CVS in Dallas, and then the next day I went to my other doctor. I went to CVS in Allen, and they're like, "Whoa, you just filled," and I almost got busted. I got caught, but lucky they gave me my script back, and I went next door to Walgreens. But it was just insanity, man. So here I am, full-fledged functioning addict again. I'm still kicking butt at work, but I'm popping all these pills. But things were going good. So I decided, you know what? It's time to buy a house for my son. I wrote out a check for $1,250 for my rent on an apartment, for a 2-bedroom apartment. I thought, this is ridiculous, man. I'm going to buy a house. And so I started looking at houses. And of course, I was praying. I looked at probably 8 or 10. I was praying, God, which house? Because I want the right house. I want the right school district to raise my son. And so I was really praying about it, really looking at it. And I can remember when I was a kid asking my mom, "Mom, why doesn't God answer my prayers?" She's like, "Oh, honey, He does." I'm like, "No, He doesn't, man. Like I do a lot of talking, but I don't hear anything back from Him. Why didn't He answer my prayers?" I ask Him stuff all the time, but I feel like I'm the only one in the conversation. And I don't know. She probably said He works in mysterious ways, or I don't know. But I just wanted Him to send me call me on the phone, or send a smoke signal, or text message me or something. But God never answered. Well, when I started praying on this house, I got a real answer. I got a real answer from God. First time in my life, I had visions, like open visions. I mean, and I am nobody. I don't have a relationship with Jesus. I called myself a Christian, but I was nobody. And I was at work one day, and I'd go up to the coffee pot or to the water jug or whatever, and it just seemed like I stood there for like 10, 15 minutes at a time, and I could just see myself walking through this house. It was a particular house, one specific house in Allen, Texas. It was nothing special. Like I'd be like pulling my Harley in the garage, or I'd be walking through the living room, or out in the backyard messing with my son on the swing set. But this happened all day long. And I was on the way home from work that night, and I was thinking about it, and I started thinking about this house again. And then it dawned on me, oh my goodness, I got an answer. That's an answer. Like, that's God telling me that house is mine. Oh my God. Whoa. I had a vision. I was pumped. So I call my realtor, and I'm like, "Brandon, hey man. I said, I asked God what house. He told me the house in Allen. I want to buy the house. That one in Allen's my house." So pumped, because I'd never heard from God, right? And he's like, "All right, Dave, do you want to make an offer on it?" I said, "Yeah, I do. God told me that's my house." So he said, "All right, they're asking $136,000 for it. How much you want to offer?" And I said, 119, because I figured God told me that's my house. I might as well go low, right? Because I already got a shoe in. So he said, "Well, that's kind of low, man." I said, "Yeah, but I can go up later, right? I mean, like, I can't go down. I don't want to offer too much." He said, "Yeah, but that's kind of low." I said, "Just put it in. God's already told me that's my house, so we're going to get it no matter what." And so he said, "All right." So about a week later, I'm sitting at my desk, and my secretary rings me. She says, David, there's a Mr. Watkins on the phone. So I pick up the phone. I said, hey, man, what's up? Did I get the house? He's like, no, you didn't get the house. He said, in fact, not only did you not get the house, but you kind of offended the seller by putting in such a lowball offer. And I said, what? He said, as a matter of fact, they had 7 other people put in offers and they were all higher than your offer. And that house sold. It's not on the market anymore. I said, what? Man, that cannot be. I said, I pray to God, I got an answer. He told me that's my house. He said, don't worry about it, man. He said, this happens all the time in my business. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll set up some more houses to look at this weekend and we'll just start again. I said, no, I'm not. Didn't you hear me? I said, dude, I told you, I prayed. And for the first time in my life, I got an answer. And God told me that house in Allen, Texas is my house. And I'm not going to look at other houses. He said, brother, didn't you hear me? I told you that house sold. It's not on the market anymore. I said, man, I don't know. I got to talk to God about this. Like I had this, I could just go to God and like he talks to me once in my life, and now all of a sudden I just have this relationship with him. Well, I went to God. I'm like, God, what happened? Like, did I hear you wrong? I mean, what did I do something wrong? I mean, you told that house, it was supposed to be mine. What happened? Of course, I didn't hear a word from God. Nothing. Just silence. And so, you know what? I just went back to work. My son was in sports at the time, so I started doing sports and work. And I just kind of put looking at houses on the back burner. And it must have been 3 or 4 weeks later, and I'm sitting at my desk, and my secretary rings me. She said, David, there's a Mr. Watkins on the phone. I said, woohoo, put him through. That's my realtor. And I pick up the phone and I said, hey, brother, how'd I get the house? He said, dude, you're not going to believe this. I said, yeah, I'm going to believe it. But how'd I get it? He said, man, I don't know exactly what happened. I think the financing fell through. He said, but what I do know is the seller, they went from being offended at your lowball offer to specifically saying, we would like to sell our house to that single dad and his young son. And so I got the house that God promised me. In fact, that's where I'm sitting right now. This is my house that God told me I was going to get. I'm still here. Whew. The Lord is so good. So 2 months, 2 months after I got this house, I got fired. I lost my corporate job because I'm popping all these pills. I'm a drug addict, right? So I have a brand new house. I have a brand new house payment. I have my son to take care of, and I have no job. And no big deal, because people have recruited me my whole life. I can get a job, no problem. Well, guess what? This was in 2008, right after the housing market crashed. I could not pay for a job. There were no jobs in mortgage. I was hot. I had 16 years experience. I was applying for, 2-year position. Nobody would hire me. So I was on, I was on food stamps. I was on unemployment. I was in line at the food pantry. I mean, this went on. And it got tight. I mean, I ran out of money and I had no income and I didn't know what to do. So, you know what? I started a mortgage company before, so I thought I'm going to do it again. So I got home and I sat at home and I'd cold call, but nobody was, not only were people not hiring for mortgage professionals, nobody was doing mortgage loans because the housing market just crashed. I mean, it was a mess. And so about 6 months into it, my dad came down here to Dallas. He lives in Northeast Oklahoma, and he came by to visit me, and he brought me a sewing machine. And he's like, son, I brought you a sewing machine. You can always do upholstery. And I thought, oh, no, Dad. I was like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I didn't say no thanks, but I took it just because I didn't want to offend my dad. But I thought, you know what? There's no way no way. I'm a mortgage banker. I'm a mortgage professional. So I took the machine, and then I couldn't get any loans. So yeah, I thought, you know what? I'll spend half a day trying to get mortgage loans, and then I'll spend half a day trying to get upholstery leads. And so I did that for, I don't know, somewhere between 2 weeks and a month. And at the end of that time period, I had page after page after page of possible upholstery leads. I didn't have one mortgage loan application. So as they say, the writing was on the wall. I opened an upholstery company. So if you look at it, I went to prison and got trained for what I still do today. I still own the mortgage or the upholstery company today. And it's just crazy how he works it out, because I had never sewed before I went to prison. That's what I do for a living now. But when I started out, true story, I didn't even know how to spell upholstery. I mean, you try to spell it, it's not as easy as it sounds. So I had to look it up. But not only did I not know how to spell upholstery, but I had no clue how to do it. Right. So I started dragging jobs home. I'd call my dad and ask him how to bid it, and he'd give me an idea. And I had no idea what I was doing. I got the first couch back here to my house, and I had to call my dad, ask him how it comes apart, and it was just crazy. It was a frustrating time. I'll say that. Because I was literally taking half of a couch apart and then leaving the other half together and trying to put it back the way the other half was. And so I got into boats and I started doing boats, and it was trial and error, man. But eventually, over probably 3 to 5 years, I started to learn my trade. I started getting a name for myself in boats, and I started having people from the marinas that year after year that rented boats would send me boat business, and so it was starting. I was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I was making a little bit of money, not much to speak of, but I was starting to get confident in my trade. And so things looked like they were going to start taking off, and I might have a chance at this, making money, making a living doing upholstery. And then we had a 3-year drought in Dallas. The lakes dried up, and so did the boat upholstery business. And so I had to do furniture upholstery. Now, let me just tell you, furniture upholstery is a whole different animal than boat upholstery. It's just different. I can explain it to you, but it's just, trust me, it's different. So I didn't really know how to do furniture upholstery, but I started trying. And in the beginning, it was just like starting all over again. Like when I'd started with the boats, here I'm learning a new trade again. It was sewing, but it's just completely different. And I remember in the beginning, I think there were more people that were unhappy with their furniture than people that were happy with their furniture when I got done with it. And I can remember 2 or 3 or maybe more different jobs that I had to redo a chair, the same chair 2 and 3 times because I'd take it back. And they're like, no, we're not paying for that. I'd have to take it back and tear it apart and redo it again. It was just a frustrating time, but I was starting to learn a little at a time. And then one day I get a voicemail, and it's a guy just called out of the blue, said he's looking for a job. He's got 25 years of upholstery experience in furniture upholstery. And I thought, oh, hot dog, this is what I need. Somebody teach me how to do furniture upholstery, because the boat business went away. The lakes are dry. But it wasn't just the upholstery experience that the guy had. See, it's kind of like us Christians. We're kindred spirit. I mean, we can meet each other and not know each other and talk for hours just because we have the same spirit living in us. Well, drug addicts are the same way. Like, I can look at a crowd and I can tell you the 5 people who are doing drugs or who are strung out, and they know I am if I was still in that life. We just know it about each other. And I knew for a fact that this guy on my voicemail was a meth addict, and I knew he was high, and I thought, oh, hot dog, this is what I need. I got somebody to teach me the business. I'm going to get me some methamphetamines, so I'll do the work of 10 men, and I'm taking over Dallas in the upholstery business. That's how I started my mortgage company, was high on meth, and I rocked. I mean, I ruled. So I thought, this is the answer to my prayers. So I hired the guy right away. And from day one, I'm saying, hey, man, break out. Share. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, break out the meth, man. I know you're high. He's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, man, don't bogart it from me. I mean, share. I gave you a job. At least you can do is get me high. And so I worked on this guy for probably 2 weeks. And one day he reached in his pocket, pulled out a meth pipe and threw it to me. And woohoo, I was back in the saddle again. Now I could work 24 hours a day. 18 hours a day, I'm exaggerating a little, but I had somebody show me the business. We were cranking work out, and I was getting things done. I was starting to make a little money. And for the first couple of years, things were going good. That started about a 7-year binge. Me and this guy were all day, every day for the next 7 years. This is what I did, was meth. Me and this guy, we partnered up. We worked together. That's all we did, was do meth and do upholstery. And things were going good in the beginning. But how many that sin will take you further than you want to go, and it'll keep you longer than you want to stay. And that's exactly what happened to me with that meth addiction. Things were great in the beginning. Nobody knew I was doing dope. I was getting all this work done. I was getting set up with the Chamber of Commerce and all the Harley shops, setting up, doing upholstery work, making custom motorcycle seats, doing furniture. I was doing it all. But then little things started happening. Like my electric get turned off, or my water, or I'd get pulled over, get a lot of tickets, speeding through a school zone because I'm high. I'm not thinking about the speed limit. I started getting lots of tickets. They turned my water off one day, and so I wasn't going to pay it. And so I kept turning it back on. I turned it back on so many times out of the street that they put a lock on my put a lock on my water meter. And you think I was gonna let that fly? No, I waited till 4:30 in the morning. I took an angle grinder out there and I cut that lock off. And so then they wrote a ticket for me, issued a warrant for my arrest. So one day I'm going to Kroger grocery shopping and I end up spending 5 days in jail. It's just, things started not being so good after years of continued meth use. And things got pretty bad there for a while. They started getting real bad. There was one particular time that I guess this is what you would call one of the low points, was after work every day. Me and my son, I don't know, my son was probably 8 or 10. We would gather up all the 5-gallon buckets, the Home Depot, the orange Home Depot buckets. We'd gather up all the Home Depot buckets that we could find, and we'd put them in the back of my truck. And then we'd drive up to Racetrack because Racetrack had a free water spigot. And we'd fill these buckets full. And then I put them back in my truck. I didn't have lids because the lids were like another $3 each. I didn't have the money for that. So I drive home with these buckets of water in the back of my truck. And half of the water would splash out on the way home. So by the time I got home, there was maybe a third of a bucket left of water. But that water, that's what we flushed our toilets with and what we bathed with. And I'll never forget taking pots and dipping them down in those 5-gallon buckets and putting them on my stove and heating up water on my stove with these pots and pans, and then dumping them in the bathtub and then mixing it with the cold water so my son could have a warm bath. But if you ask me, at the time, it didn't have anything to do with my drug addiction. It had nothing to do with my drug addiction. It's because that dang water company, they charged me a late fee they shouldn't have, and I'm not going to pay it because I shouldn't have. They should owe me. And it was just stupid. It's insanity. So I actually had my water off so long in my house that they wrote me a letter and said if they didn't get it turned back on by the end of the month, they were going to condemn my house and evict me from my own home. So yeah, there were some low points. The meth eventually caught up. So my son's mom, she was an addict as well, and she ended up getting clean finally, and she got married. She had a son and a daughter. So one summer, and my son didn't really know his mom because I had sole full custody. So one summer she said, "Hey, can Braden come up and stay with me for a month?" I asked him, he said, "Yeah, I'd like to get to know my mom and my brother and my sister." So I sent him up to Oklahoma. And it went good. And he, got to get to know his mom and his sister and his brother and his stepdad. So they sent him home. And so the next year they asked again, "Hey, can Braden come up to stay with us for a month?" I said, "Sure, man, that'd be great." Only this time they didn't let him come back because they knew how strung out I was. I mean, I couldn't even keep my water on. I couldn't keep my electric. I couldn't take care of myself, much less my son. So I didn't even fight it because I knew he was better off. I raised my son. He was 12 at the time. I raised him by myself from 3 years old. He was 12 at this time, and he got taken away from me. And it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, not fight for, but I knew it was the right thing. My son is the only person that I've ever loved more than myself in my entire life. And so I could do it. I was going to get clean no matter what. This is it. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. Now I have a reason that I can get clean. So I told the guy that was doing contract labor for me, the guy I'd been doing dope and upholstery with for the last 7 years, I told him, I said, "Brother, you got to get out of my house, out of my shop. I have a home-based shop. I said, I don't mind if you keep doing contract labor for me, but I've got to get my son back. I got to get off this dope, and I cannot get clean if I'm around you and your dope. So you got to do it elsewhere. You find your shop, and you can keep doing my work." And so it took a couple, 2-3 weeks, but he finally got his own shop, moved out, and things were starting to work. I was getting off meth, so I slept a lot, but I'd wake up and take him furniture. He'd get it done. I'd drive out and pick it up. I'd pay him in cash. I'd load up the furniture, and I'd haul that out of there. I wasn't going to hang around because I didn't want to be tempted. I didn't want to see any dope. I didn't want to see him high on it. I didn't want to be tempted in any way, shape, or form. So, and this was starting to work out. So I actually got myself clean for about 3 weeks. And during that 3 weeks, man, I got lonely because for the last 7 years, every friend I had was a drug addict, a meth addict, a dealer, a prostitute, a hustler, whatever, somebody that I was no longer associating with. And, my family, I had burned every bridge that I had with my family. My dad was the only one really talking to me. And that was just when I called him now and then when I needed money to get the electric turned back on. My neighbors, I wasn't real close with them anymore because I've got a meth house next door. There's cars and people in and out of my house all hours of the night. There are nights that I sat out in my driveway with an angle grinder at 4:30 in the morning, cutting a bumper off a girl's car at 4:30 in the morning. I mean, it's insanity because I was so tweaked out. I thought it would be cool. And I don't have to wait till the morning when it's daylight. I'll do it now, dang it. I mean, it's just stuff like that. So I had no friends. And I felt like my only friend was my TV and my dog. And I remember asking God, I said, God, you know what? If that TV is the only friend you're going to allow me to have, will you at least somehow make it a blessing? And you know what? I said that prayer in doubt because I was raised that the TV is Satan's tool. And how in the world is God going to make that TV a blessing, right? Well, guess what? Within 3 days, this was before smart TVs were a big thing. Within 3 days, I figured out how to get YouTube on my TV. And oh my goodness, the whole world was out there on YouTube. Like I found people like Alex Jones and conspiracy theories. I found people that believe the earth is flat in 2018 or whatever it was. But then I stumbled upon these preachers. Woo! And I had never heard preaching like that. They were teachers and preachers, people like Derek Gilbert and L.A. Marzulli and Tom Horn and Steve Quayle and stuff like that. I was blown away. I never heard anything like it. I grew up in church. I went to Sunday school, but man, they were making the Bible come alive. Like there's like talking donkeys. There's like demons. There's angels that came down from heaven and had sex with human women and produced offspring that are giants. Oh my, they never taught me that in Sunday school. Where were these stories, right? There's a fish that spit a coin out because Jesus had to pay the temple tax. Wow, this was better than any Marvel movie I had ever seen. And I got so into these teachers and preachers, and I would sit in my shop and I would cut patterns and sew and listen to YouTube for 8-10 hours a day. And I couldn't get enough. And then I remember somebody mentioned this conference coming to Grapevine, Texas. Here are the Watchmen. And I was like, what in the world's that? And then I heard it advertised a few times. And so I went and checked that, and I just felt drawn to this conference. I mean, I don't know what it was, but I felt like I was supposed to go. So I heard the advertised 3 or 4 or 5 times. I don't know. Finally, I got on my computer and went and pulled up the website. I was like, oh dear Lord, $100. I can't afford that. I mean, geez Louise. I mean, I can't even keep my electric on. But then I can't explain. It was like a tractor beam pulling me to this conference. I just felt like I was supposed to be there. So I bought the tickets. And this was in like October, November. It was early. I mean, the conference wasn't until March. And so I bought the tickets, hung them on my calendar. And then I went back to work, listening to these preachers and teachers on YouTube and doing upholstery. And fast forward about 3 weeks or a month, and my buddy that's doing contract labor for me, he calls me. He's like, hey, brother, I just got kicked out of my shop, because he's a meth addict. I mean, we're not the most dependable people in the world. So he loses his shop. He's got 7 or 8 jobs of mine that he has to get done. And he has nowhere to do them, so he has to come back to my shop. And I said, all right, brother, that's cool, but don't you dare bring any dope to my house. I said, I got 3 weeks or a month or whatever it was clean, and I want to get my son back. I said, you can get as high as you want before work. You can go lunch and get tweaked out of your brain. I don't care, but do not bring dope to my house. And so he came over, he was doing the jobs, and I don't know, a week or 2 in, I'd walk out the shop and he'd be holding up a bag to the light going, hey, Dave, what do you think? Is that a gram? Or did I get screwed on that? I'm like, man, what are you doing, man? I'm trying to get my son back, and here you are waving dope in front of my face. I mean, what? And this kept happening. So one day I was sitting at my desk right where I'm sitting right now, and he pops his head in the door over there, and he throws something in the air, and as he's throwing it, he says, hey man, I'm running the store, I'll be back. Well, by the time I caught it, he was gone, and I opened my hand, and it's a loaded meth pipe. And I sat there and I was like, I could not believe he did that. And I sat there just shaking. And I don't know how long I sat there. I don't know. All I can tell you for sure is I got high that day. I fell off the wagon. And so, everybody relapses. I thought, okay, it'll just be for today. I'll go to sleep tonight and I'll be good tomorrow. Well, yeah, that turned into being high that night. I couldn't sleep because it's meth. And so then I needed more next day. And so for the first week, I was in denial. Like, I'm not letting my son down. I'm not going to do this. That's it. 2 days and I'm done. 3 days, I'm done. I'll get some NyQuil. I mean, whatever. You lie to yourself. Long story short, man, I got jumped right back into that addiction. Only this time it was way worse. I thought I was high before. This time I got out there past Pluto because, I wasn't happy when I was a meth addict before. I wasn't happy with myself, but now I hated myself. Like now I was disgusted because I had a month clean. My goal is to get my son back, who I've raised from 3 years old to 12. The only person I've ever loved more than myself. And here I am high again. And so once I got back where I was addicted and I knew I couldn't break away again because I had this guy working here and he's got dope around all the time. Then I just started shoving in me drugs and alcohol and pot, everything I could get into me, and as much as I could. And I didn't know what day it was most days. I didn't know my name probably. I got out there past Pluto. I got high because I hated myself. And I can remember during this time, there was several occasions that I would be in my truck on the way to the dope house. And I would have to pull my truck over on the side of the road because I would be crying so profusely. I couldn't see the road. I would be yelling to God saying, God, where are you? I mean, really? You create heaven and earth, but you can't deliver me from a little meth. I mean, what is going on? I want my son back. And then I would dry my eyes off and I'd clear my face and I'd get back on the road and I'd drive to the dope house so I could get my dope, so I could get up in the morning, so I could work, so I could get the jobs done, so I could get some money, so I could go to the dope house and get some dope, so I could get the jobs done, so I could get up in the morning, work, get the jobs done, so I could make some money, so I could go to the dope house and get some dope. And it's just insanity. It's like being on a roundabout that you just can't get off. It's just going in circles and going in circles. And I just wanted free from this addiction so bad, but I just couldn't do it. And I'm sitting in my office one day. I'm sitting right here. I'm sitting now, and I turned the calendar from February to March, and there was a piece of paper hanging on my calendar. And I said, "What in the world's that?" And I pulled it off and read it. And said, "Hear the Watchman." I was like, "What is this?" Hear the Watchman. I was like, "Oh God, you idiot! Wow, you're stupid. Like, really?" Like I was so embarrassed and frustrated. I actually paid money for a Bible. Oh my goodness, Dave. Wow. They saw you coming, didn't they, brother? But then I remembered, like a little bit of hope or something. I remembered, wait a minute. I remember being really drawn to that conference, like so much so that I spent $100 that I did not have to get tickets. I wonder if I'm supposed to go. And then that other voice said, "No, you're not going. You're a meth addict. You're going to stay here and get high. That's what we're doing. We're getting high. You can't go out, hang out with a bunch of Jesus freaks, a bunch of Bible thumpers. I mean, really? You all tweaked out? That'll go over good, Dave." And then I remember that hope. And I'm like, man, but there was a draw. I can't explain it, but there was a draw to go to this conference. So I don't know. I had this battle going on. And then I remember, this is honest God true, I was getting low on dope, because I was sitting here contemplating life and the conference and all that, getting high, of course. And I was running low on dope. And I thought, you know what? I'm kind of low on money too. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to that conference. I'm going to get my $100 back, and I'm going to the dope house. I'm going to get some meth, and I'm getting high today. Right. So, and I figured out if I had any hope of getting my ticket money back, I'd have to be there first thing. I couldn't wait till half the conference is over and ask for my money back. So I was there first thing in the morning. It was Friday, I think. Maybe it was Thursday night, Friday. Anyway, I got there. So I was here in Allen. I'd get good and high. I'd smoke a few bowls of meth, do a line. Then I jumped in my truck, went to Grapevine. I was going to get my money back for my tickets. Talked to a couple people. They said I couldn't get my money back. So I thought, well, I'm here. I might as well sit down and listen and see what they have to say. So I sat down and I listened to the first speaker or two, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember these guys are interesting. Yeah, I like this. This is kind of interesting. But then after the first speaker or two, I caught myself nodding off, like because the meth was wearing off and I was falling asleep at this conference. I thought, oh Lord, you can't do that, Dave. You can't like pass out like right here at a Bible conference. All these Jesus people around. So So I jumped in my truck and I drove back to Allen. And I got the live stream on the conference because I wanted to see the conference. It was really interesting. And I thought, man, I paid for this. So I'm going to at least watch it. And so I got home and I started watching it on my computer. And I'd sit here and hit my meth pipe and get high while I was watching the conference. And so that was Friday. And then I got up Saturday and I got good and high that morning and headed to the conference, did the same thing. I listened Saturday morning. I listened to a couple of the speakers until the meth started wearing off and I started nodding off. And then I jumped in the truck and came back home and I watched the rest of the conference doing meth, sitting here smoking meth and doing lines. But Saturday, I remember somebody mentioning baptisms on Sunday. And I thought, oh, snap. Maybe that's why I'm here, because I was looking for a reason that I was there. I figured there had to be some reason I was at the conference, right? I felt this draw when I was broke. I felt this draw to spend money I didn't have to go to this conference. And so I figured something significant was going to happen. Maybe there was a speaker I was supposed to hear or something. But so far, there wasn't any speaker that I went, oh, that's why I'm here. There wasn't anything specific or special that happened. But then when they said baptism, I said, maybe that's it. So my dad was a pastor growing up. And I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm thinking about getting baptized again. What do you think? He said, no, you don't need to do that, son. You got baptized when you're 8 years old. You're good. You're good for life. Once is enough. I said, oh, all right. Well, I have no idea why I'm at this conference. So I listened to the rest of the conference, but I don't know. It was in the back of my head. Like I had no place to turn. Like I had tried everything there was to quit doing meth. And I remember telling God, if when I did decide to get baptized, if he didn't change my life, that I give up. I'm just going to be a professional meth addict because I can't. It's got me. It had full control over me. So Saturday night, I stayed up till 3 or 4 in the morning. I was smoking meth. I was smoking pot. I was drinking alcohol, probably eating Xanax. Who knows? But I was still debating whether to get baptized or not the next day. And of course, when you stay up late and you're doing drugs, then I slept late. And so Sunday I woke up, it was probably 10:30 or something. I don't know. But I was like, when I saw the time, I was like, oh man, I missed it. Now I'm never going to know, because I had this kind of hope that maybe something would happen if I got baptized. But then that other voice would say, you're an idiot, man. What are you doing? What's going to happen? I mean, what do you expect to happen? You can't believe this fairy tale stuff. So it was like, I don't know, 10 or 10:30 when I would wake up. And I was frustrated and discouraged because now I'll never know. And then I looked at the clock again. I thought, you know what? I can drive pretty fast when I'm high. So I got the rest of my meth out and I did smoke the rest of the meth I had. I licked the baggie and done all that I had. I jumped in the truck and headed to the Grapevine. And by the time I got to Grapevine, the morning services were already over. They were already in the pool there at the Hilton. And there was a big long line. And I got there and I was like, oh man, I can't even talk to anybody about it now. Like they're dunking people now. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'll go get dressed. I'll go get changed and get in line. And then I can decide. I got dressed. I got in line. The next thing you know, it was my turn to go. And I thought, well, what do I have to lose? I mean, it can't hurt anything, but I was really hoping something would happen. I mean, after all, I hadn't found any other reason I was at the conference except to hear some good speakers. And so I went down in the water, and it was Coach Dave Dalbenmeyer, and it was Pastor Begley. And I remember saying to them, I remember asking them, and they thought I was joking, but I was serious. I said, hey, do you guys mind holding me under the water a little bit longer than you normally do? Because I want to make sure I'm clean. And I was dead serious. But they're like, sure, brother. And so they baptized me. And I don't know if they held me under the water longer or not. But when I came out of the water, nothing happened, man. And I come out of the water. They said, congratulations, hugged me and kicked me out of the pool and got the other one in, right? Put a towel around me and sent me on my way. And I can remember sitting over in the chair, dripping water, just feeling so ashamed and so embarrassed, because here I had bought into this fairy tale that there's some God in the sky that could somehow change my life. And I didn't know what I was expecting. I don't know. I was expecting like maybe trumpets to blow or a light to shine down from heaven, or maybe God to say, behold, my son David, who I'm well pleased. Something, but nothing happened when I came out of the water. But you know what? Something must have happened when I was in the water, because I went into the water that day high as a kite, and I came out, and that was 5 years ago last weekend, and I have not once ever touched meth again since I came out of that water. Jesus set me free and broke those chains that bound me my whole life. And he's completely turned around my life since then. Like 6 months later, my son moved back home. My family, my relationships with my family are restored better than ever. Neighbors, we have a good relationship. My son called me today. My son moved back home, and just a month ago, he had his own son. So now I'm a granddad for the first time. And now I'm somebody he can be proud of, he can look up to. And he called me today. This is how cool it is when you run with God. Like yesterday, I'm reading in Luke. And then all of a sudden, I just had an urge to turn to Ezekiel. And I read a chapter in Ezekiel, and then I went back to Luke. Today, my son calls me. He's like, hey, Dad, I was reading the Bible. I don't read the Bible, but today I got it out, and I turned to Ezekiel, and I read this chapter. It's the exact chapter I read. He asked me what it was about, and it's just, wow, God just works in amazing ways. But now I have a son who's seen me go from drug addict to an on-fire Christian. Some might even call radical. My former friends tell me I'm a radical or whatever. Anyway, that's a badge of honor to me. But after I got delivered, God started opening doors for me. Let me check the time here. See, I have time just to share a couple more testimonies real quick, Mike. Anyway, so after I got set free, God started opening doors for me to share my testimony. So the first one, I had asked my sister if I could come to her home group and tell my testimony because and the only testimony I knew I had at the time was I was a drug addict and I was bound to addiction, and then I got baptized and now I'm free. And that was my whole testimony. And then I told you how I got the revelation of this whole testimony. So I went to this, and God gave me this testimony I just shared with you like 3 days before I went to this home team to give my testimony, right? So I went there, and it's like, I don't know, 10, 12 people. And then I'm part of a overcomers group, where I was back then, maybe 8 or 10 people. And I shared with them. I kept telling them every week, I wanted to share my testimony. Finally, one week they said, well, get up and share it. So I had shared it with them. And I knew I had something special here, that God had radically changed my life, and I wanted to share it with the world. And then God put Mike Kerr on my mind and said, you know what, you need to contact that guy that did the conference. I bet he'd like to hear this story. So I emailed Mike, and I didn't expect to hear back from him, honestly. I mean, because I figured Mike's busy. I mean, he's out running conferences and stuff. He don't have time for me. But I was probably, and I just said, God, I feel like Holy Spirit led me to email him. And I just said, hey, I'm leaving it to you, God. And I think probably within a couple hours, he emailed me back and said, hey, brother, yeah, I'd love to hear it. Come on my show. And so the very next week, the third time I ever even shared this testimony was on Mike's podcast or on his YouTube channel. And then I had it recorded. And then it became such a witnessing tool for me, because then people come in my shop, and I don't care who you are. You come in my shop, you're hearing about Jesus and how I was a drug addict, how he set me free. And if you want to do upholstery after that, that's fine. But we're going to talk about Jesus when you're in my shop. And so now I had testimonies to send. And then people started sharing my testimony around. And I got hooked up with this prison ministry group, and we go into a different prison every month and I get to share my story and just minister to inmates. We go to death row people. I had a guy, a customer that came into my shop, and I started sharing with him how I was a drug addict and God set me free. And I sent him my testimony. Well, he happened to be like the regional president or whatever of the Full Gospel Businessmen of America. And so then I'm going to these luncheons, like 4 or 5 different locations for the Full Gospel Businessmen, sharing my story there. Then I got on a national Zoom call with the Full Gospel Businessmen. And then some church, predominantly Black church in South Dallas, called me. And I only knew that because I was the only white person there. And they asked me if I'd be like a guest at one of their weekend conference, and wanted me to be on a question and answer panel. And so they sent me a flyer, and it was so funny because it's like all these titles, like pastor so-and-so, minister so-and-so, reverend so-and-so, then David Scarberry. But God just opened doors for me, man. And so I was just having a blast telling people what God had done for me. And then COVID hit. They shut the prisons down. People quit. I'm going to go through this fast because I know it's getting late, but I just got to share a couple more things that are really cool. Because God has changed my life. He didn't stop when I come out of the water. He has continued to change me and help me grow every year. So COVID happened. The prisons got shut down. I quit sharing my story because nobody was having, the NA and sober living houses weren't having people over. And so I was asking God, hey, God, I want to be used, man. I'm on fire. I need to be able to share what you've done for me. And so I was sitting in church one day, and this evangelist came to church, and he was talking about this thing called Messenger Boot Camp, and it's a 10-week journey into the burning heart of God. And basically what it is, I had a card I was going to read, but anyway, basically what it is they teach you who you are, whose you are. Like, you learn your identity in Christ, that we're actually God's sons and daughters, and it teaches you intimacy, but it also teaches you to go out and share your faith. So if you came into my house or my shop, you're going to hear about Jesus. But if I were out at the fair, or I was at Walmart or something, there's no way you're going to hear about Jesus. You wouldn't know if I was any more Christian than anybody else. But anyway, so they taught me. I'll just fast forward. Long story short, I learned how to share my faith. Now I'm the outreach leader for my local church. I'm in a ministry school called Just One City School of Missions. I'm the outreach leader over them. We do what's called Love Dallas, Love New York. We go to different cities around the country, and we do 24/7 prayer. Prayer and outreach and intercession for the town. We just love on the city, and we'll have like 5 or 6 outreach groups a day going out all over the city. And God's just hooked me up with this. I've seen miracles. I did this training through this boot camp, and they took me like by the hand, like a 3-year-old, and taught me like the first week just go how to talk to somebody, second week how to pray with somebody. This went on for 10 weeks. By the end of the 10 weeks, I'm seeing people get healed. I'm open air preaching. I'm sharing the gospel. The first person that I ever heard saw get healed for somebody I prayed with was my sister. And I'll end it with this because I know it's getting late, but this is amazing. So I went to this boot camp for about six weeks. And my dad was in town. And so I met my family, my sister, my brother-in-law, my niece, my dad for dinner at King Buffet in Plano. And I had been doing this boot camp, and we were sitting there eating, and my dad's an Army vet. He had an Army hat on. So somebody came by and they said, "Hey, thanks for your service." And they shook my dad's hand, and then they shook my sister's hand for some reason. And when my sister turned around, she was almost in tears. I said, "Dang, man, did he shake your hand that hard?" She's like, "No, it's my wrist." And I forgot. For years, my sister has had degenerative arthritis, and she had wore wrist splints on both wrists, and she could barely even pick up her cell phone. And immediately the Holy Spirit said, "Go pray for her." And I said, "Oh no, Jesus wasn't even accepted in his hometown. Like, this is my family. I've been the black sheep and a drug addict. They're not going to accept that." And then my sister looked at me and she said, "Hey, you've been doing that boot camp thing. You want to pray for me?" Man, I jumped up and ran over the other side of the table right there in King Buffet. I just laid my hands on her, said, "In the name of Jesus, wrist be healed and made whole." And she went, "Oh, they're better." And I was like, "What?" I was as shocked as she was, because I never seen anybody get healed before, especially if I'm praying on them. I was like, "Are they like completely better or just a little bit?" She's like, "No, a lot better, but not complete." So I said, "Let's finish this." And I just prayed and asked God to finish the healing. That was 1.5 years ago. My sister hasn't wore a wrist splint since then. She says once in a while she'll have just a little annoying feeling to remind her she had it, but completely healed. And man, I've been running with this evangelism school, and I guess I'm just in the next phase. I'm just seeing people get healed and saved and delivered on a weekly basis. I take a crew out to the street every Wednesday. I'm over a crew that goes out 7 days a week all over Dallas. I can talk to you all night, but I'll shut up, man. Just God is amazing. Every one of us are called to share the gospel. Every one of us is called to heal the sick, cleanse the leper, raise the dead, cast out demons. It says, freely you have received, so freely give. So I challenge you, just step out of your comfort zone, because God's anointing shows up when you are obedient and you go ask somebody, "Hey, can I pray for you?" Or, "Hey, man, I have a word for you." And you're going to miss it sometimes. It's embarrassing at first, but that's the worst thing that can happen. Maybe you get it wrong. The best thing that can happen is you actually had a word from God and they get healed, or they get delivered, or they receive Jesus. So I encourage you, man, go out.
You guys can understand. When David showed up at the conference, I met him and I was like, this kid's a hot mess, man. He's just like me. He's a hot mess. And
Yeah.
and he needs healing. And you got it.
Yes, I did.
And you know, it's so funny, you guys, because when he was at the conference in Dallas or in Grapevine the last couple of weeks, he came up to me and he said, I have to leave early because I have to go get my grandson.
Yep. Whew.
Now, don't do that. Now, do you know why we do here at the Watchman? Get it?
Yeah.
That's why.
Change.
That's why Jeannie and I do it. That's
Woo.
why we pour our money out there. That's why we go for broke every time, because of guys just like this who you know I totally relate to. Maybe unfortunately. You know, but David he's an amazing man, and he's restored his entire life through Jesus.
Yes.
Not through us, not through Jeannie and I. We really didn't do anything. You know, we just had like some little party in Texas that he came to. And his whole life has been changed because of that. And that's the thing. And you know what? Jeannie and I are not special. All of you can do exactly what we do. You just have to answer the calling. That's all you have to do. I mean, David's doing some insane work out there. You know, he's like doing a prison ministry and a street ministry. David, how do they find you?
What's that? Who?
How do they find you?
The people we witnessed to, or
no, people who want to help you. How do they find you?
Oh, like email? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like us. Like David, how do we tithe to you so that you can continue doing your work?
Yeah. Gee, I don't have anything set up, but I can get it. But yeah. I mean, I have Venmo or email or Zelle or anything like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I've actually been invited to Greece in July and to New York to lead outreach teams there. So I would appreciate anybody if they would